Good morning. Bonjour, ça va? This is Tyrite Road in London, southeast London, and you're going to take a walk with me to Hilly Fields Park. It's right at the top, but I figured while nature is singing, I can tell you a bit about the housing here. This road is an established road, and you can tell that by the lovely trees, large old trees which line the sides of the road. The houses are quite grand and spacious, very high ceilings. It's also, well, we're in March, and if you can see up ahead, we have a cherry blossom tree that is in full bloom. These trees are very hard to get in more modern neighborhoods, and if you can see, the architectural work around the houses are really unique to these very old houses. Very beautiful. It's actually very difficult to find standalone houses. They're normally attached, but you can see this one is standalone. But then of course you have modern twists, such as this one here. And here's our tree. We're now approaching Hilly Fields. This is it. This is part of it. And as you can see, the children are out. Let's see if I can do this quickly. The Bowls Club is here. And we'll make our way up to the top where there's a cafe. And that's the cafe. You can have a beautiful view over London from Hilly Fields. And of course it's better on a slightly brighter, more clear day. But this is it. It is wonderful for exercise, for just walks. A lot of people come here with their pets. It's a great place to think. It's a safe place to be. Great for picnics. I've done it. also tennis courts. And this is where we're going. The Cafe.
Yeah, and it's sort of like looking at what
This is the view of the city. This is Lewisham, and they have quite a number of high-rises that are being built, full with condominiums, but they're also mixed-use buildings. So you'll have shops and eateries at different floors. Beyond the trees is London, actually, and the Shard and so forth. But it's a cloudy day, so what I'm going to do is show you this house here. It was at this house that two astronomers lived. Their names were Walter and Annie Munder, and they were astronomers who studied a lot about space, including researching the sun and Mars. And there was a great ceremony today. Ceremony meaning a few speakers who came together and recognized the stamp, or this metal post, from the British heritage, as they recognized that these astronomers lived here. I think I have some cuts from that, so I'll show you a bit about what I heard and saw.
So I'm representing the family, and on behalf of the family I'd like to thank Nick Evans so much for his nomination of the Maunders, and to English Heritage for recognising their contribution in this splendid way. Walter Maunder was married before, as we've heard. He had 5 children with his wife Hannah before she died in 1888, shortly after my grandfather was born. Then he married his second wife Annie in 1895, some years after she had joined the observatory as a lady computer, as we've heard. On a personal level, he was obviously a devoted father to his children. He had 5 grandchildren. I think I've counted 5 children, 15 grandchildren, and I lost count of the great-grandchildren. So all the clan is quite large. When my father was alive, he collected everything as various family members died off. He collected masses of stuff about the Maunders, and eventually my elder daughter Catherine and I managed to persuade him to donate all of the papers, both personal and professional, books, photographs and everything else, to the Royal Greenwich Observatory archive, which is a personal note. I think their story is very relevant today on 3 counts. First of all, they were early climate scientists, and climate science and its relationship to weather was just as important then as it is now, because of the Great British Empire's dependence on shipping and the government grants that were available at that time for research. So it all comes down to money, isn't it? So they mind you back. So that was the first point. The second point, of course, they were both committed to recognising the contribution of women, as we've heard already. And Walter was instrumental in setting up the British Astronomical Society in 1890, I think. And from the start, the British Astronomical Society admitted women members, amateur astronomers, at a time when the Royal Royal Astronomical Society had a pronoun problem, so women weren't admitted until 1916, which was some 24 years after Walter first nominated Annie to be a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society. And thirdly, their commitment to the public understanding of science, I think, is something that, as a family member, I'm very proud of. I think it's so important, particularly now, where on social media there are so many conspiracy theories about climate change, which get far more publicity than they should. It's so important that, like Annie and Walter, young scientists today, particularly young climate scientists, are able to talk to the public in words that they can understand about their work and get their messages across. So that's particularly dear to my heart, because my late daughter, was a climate physicist at UCL and a science communicator, and that's something that is very important to us and other members of the family.
So my name is Sarah Matthews. I'm a solar physicist, so I work at UCL and the Marlow Space Science Laboratory, but I also have the honour at the moment to be the chair of an organisation called UK Solar Physics. So we represent the interests of all the people doing solar physics within the UK. So this is particularly poignant for me, given what's such a seminal contribution to the foundations of solar physics that the Maunders made. So the butterfly diagram that I'm sure you're all familiar with, the one that they painstakingly worked every evening on, switching roles so that they could make sure that the recording of the information was accurate. That really is the foundation of our understanding of the origins of solar activity. So how we link what we can see with the visible eye on the surface of the sun to everything that's happening inside the sun that creates the activity that now forms the foundations of what we call space weather. And of course the Maunders were instrumental in recognising the link, those first links between the things that we see on the sun and the disturbances that we see on Earth. So Annie's book points out this very large region, a large sunspot region on the sun that was traversing in the 1800s that produced a really enormous geomagnetic storm. And at this point nobody was really making those connections between solar activity, the sunspots, and things that happened here on Earth. But of course now we know just how critical space weather is to our daily existence. But as a woman in science, I think it's particularly wonderful for me to see that Annie is recognised by this, because her contributions and the way that she just carried on doing this to such a high level, given all of the obstacles that were in place to prevent her from doing that at the time, is amazing. That she built the cameras that she took on the eclipse expeditions that recorded the coronal rays that she then, together with Walter, interpreted as indicating the link between the sun and the heliosphere that we now know as the Parker spiral. They identified that the disturbances and the 27-day recurrence of those. We now know that fits very well with our understanding of the origins of fast solar wind streams. So really, it's just so nice to see that she is recognised for this. So at the moment, it's also quite topical. So Solar Orbiter, which was a space mission that was launched in 2020. It's currently observing at its first perihelion. So this is a spacecraft with many, many different instruments, some of them measuring sunspots and observing their properties, but also the consequent activity that comes from them. So at the moment, we're in the middle of those observations, coordinating other spacecraft assets and ground-based assets to just make further progress that builds on the foundations of what the wonders provided us with. So yeah, like Sanjeev and Nick, this is wonderful to see, and thank you to English Heritage and mostly to Nick for proposing it.
Because in 2001 I was funded for a project by English Heritage to map the English Channel, and the landscapes under the English Channel are exactly like what we see on Mars. And actually our discovery of what the landscapes, the meaning of the landscapes under the English Channel came about by me seeing a picture in a journal of Mars landscapes. So there's that connection there. So I'm very grateful that English Heritage set up, because I wouldn't have my career without that grant I had from English Heritage in 2001. And certainly the key thing as a Mars geomorphologist, and I study deep time on Mars. Mars is ancient life. And if we go back 100 years, the central theory expounded by Schiaparelli and then Lowell was about the Martian canals theory, and the idea that there was an advanced civilization living on Mars. And this was, in the public imagination. It wasn't even in the imagination, it was certainty. There is this wonderful New York Times, that central newspaper of the US, from 1911, front page headline, which says, "Martians build 2 canals in 2 years." It's extraordinary. Now, what often people don't appreciate is science isn't about searching for the truth. Science is actually questioning what's been said. And this is what Walter and Annie did, was they questioned and they tackled and they sought that, they fought that theory that Percival Lowell had established that was in the press. He did science by press release rather than by publication. And Walter did these experiments that are famous. Every public talk I give talks about the wonders. The first 3 slides I show the Martian canals and the theory of Lowell, and then I talk about Walter and Annie and how they disproved that theory. So it's wonderful to have this. So I'm going to end now with just one final little thing. When I work on, I'm very fortunate by my accidental planetary science to actually work on the 2 rovers on Mars currently active, the Curiosity rover and the Perseverance rover, and that's probably about 80% of my life at the moment. I spend my evenings working on those rovers, doing rover operations and science analysis, reconstructing Mars's climate and past history. And when I received the invitation from Kathy, I was like, wow, this is great. And then I looked at the address, and that was just truly astonishing. So currently, I do rover operations every evening from my home, which is on a telephone, at WebEx, telephone, etc. Every evening to JPL, planning what the rover is doing on Mars. My house is 200 meters that way. I can see the back of this house from my house. Isn't that extraordinary? And I think it's just astonishing for me to think that 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, Walter and Annie were sitting in this house discussing the morphology of Mars and maps of Mars, and I'm doing the same over there. But history continues. I just love that, and it's so nice for this to be celebrated here. Thank you.
The one who talked Claire Warren. I'm Claire, the chair of Brockton Society. I can't tell you how delighted I am. Well, we all are. I completely agree that South London is underrepresented in the wonderful things that other people have done. Particularly appreciate English Heritage doing this. It's really important. This is a conservation area, and the battle for conservation and for the people who brought it about is so important. So just in a very quiet way, I can't say anything about the Maunders because I don't know any more than I read on Wikipedia and heard today. But thank you very much, everyone who was responsible for getting this going, and Sanjeev for telling me about it as well. Thank you.
And yet, here we are.
looking at one of those blue plaques that recognizes the great and the good of London. And it is the Maunders names that are there, the great scientists that no one expected.
This is what they produced at this address together. Annie wrote it, and 1908, and obviously Edward Walter sort of pushed it forward to make sure that she got it out, you know, by putting his name with it. But really, it's her book.
So are these?
Because in those days it wouldn't have been accepted, you know,
Yes.
women
Yes.
getting an author. So it's very important.
Does this cover planets or the sun specifically?
It's the whole,
or is it
all the heavens and their story. And it's a wonderful book.
I will try and find
They give all the glory to God in this.
Christian people.
Very strong Christian, not Christian scientist, no. Different thing.
That's
And
amazing.
it gives reference to at the end there to Psalm 8, which consider the heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained. So that's goes right through the theme of this, you know, that they are deference to God, give glory to God. And the lovely plates in here, coloured, some black and white.
Is this from the cameras that she would have
Yes,
built
of
as
course,
well?
yes. All the work that she would have produced. Terrific. These are black and white, but earlier on there's a colour.
I'm here.
And they got a lot from the observatory.
Yeah, there's a coloured one, which is very early plates, and that's Mars, that one. Terrific, you see?
Yes. That is very clear.
All the canals. And one of the books that they wrote was Are the Planets Inhabited? And they are not. So they were both able to prove
Yes.
that.
That is amazing. Can I see the publisher's page so that I can...
Yeah.
That part is pretty important.
Not that one. That's just from a library.
Okay.
Stick it. And that's just a ownership thing. Heaven's Glory. London, Robert Cully.
There we are. The heavens and their story.
And here you are.
Psalms.
Types of stars.
Yes, thank you.